Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television. A reminder of our major stories. Boko Haram insurgents kill 14 in late-night attack in Dikwa, Borno State. Federal government meets with International Organization for Migration on the plight of Nigerians in Libyan detention camps. The Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, gives reasons for the rejection by the Senate of the bill seeking devolution of power to the states. And brother of ousted Pakistani leader is lined up to take over as Prime Minister. For more on our top stories and others, please visit our website. It's channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channelsweb. Log on to m.channelstv.com to watch us on your mobile device or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. Having the Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You also have the IWitness feature, so you too can be part of the news. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the IWitness menu and follow the instructions. And to the pictures you sent to our IWitness portal, let's begin with this set of pictures from Benin City bypass showing a traffic jam which our IWitness reporter says was due to a bad road on the highway. And next is this image from Iyaba in Lagos showing illegal refuse dump site. According to our IWitness reporter, dumping of refuse on this road has become a regular occurrence and is calling on the agencies responsible for the environmental sanitation in the state to do something, and fast too. Our next picture is from Jabi area in the capital city showing dirty water. Our IWitness reporter wants the agency responsible for the wastewater management in the FCT to fix it. And finally is this image from Government Secondary School in Sabo, Kaduna State, showing a dilapidated classroom. Our IWitness reporter insists that this building needs to be renovated. We thank you for sending those images and we do encourage you to keep them coming. Angry Ishekiri indigents today went to the palace of the Olu of Warri in Delta State in protest against the monarch's intention to confer the Prime Minister titles of Warri Kingdom on some individuals who they feel are unworthy. The protesters say they have been rejected these nominations for reasons bordering on integrity and loyalty to the cause of the Ishekiri ethnic nationality.
Aggrieved men and women from Ishekiri stormed the streets of Warri. Their destination is the Olu of Warri's kingdom to register their displeasure with the traditional ruler over alleged plans to award the title of Ologoshere, Iyashere and Owangwe to 3 individuals of his choice without consulting them. Armed with placards and songs of solidarity, they continue their march through the streets. They forced themselves into the palace, heading straight into the chambers of the traditional ruler, but were stopped by some palace chiefs who wanted to calm the situation. With order restored, the people are called to a meeting to table their concerns, where they insist on defending the ancient prestige of the kingdom. They appealed to the Olu to reconsider his stand.
The person so nominated falls short of all known constitutional standards and requirements paraded by previous occupants of such chieftaincy title in terms of age, integrity, status, intellectual capability, etc.
We're only here to appeal to the Olu to try and stop this installation.
Speaking on behalf of the palace and the candidates in question, Prince Yemi Emiko denies the people's claim.
And the tradition is very clear as to who can become Ologoshere. And as I said, we have had Ologosheres before. And let me tell you, I'm going to be 60 years in a few months. And I have seen, this is the third Olu of Wari that I'm seeing now. My father was Olu of Wari, see him here. That was my dad, Elijah II. My elder brother, Atuwashe, was Olu of Wari. I worked under them. And this one is also my brother, is the third one.
He said families involved had been engaged in meetings before an agreement was reached. Their protest may have yielded positive fruit, as a palace source told Channels Television that the Olu may have suspended his plans.
The recent meeting of governors of the Northeast states with the acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, over the rebuilding of the region has raised confidence that the objective will soon be achieved. But the governors have their work cut out for them, as attacks by the Boko Haram sect has really affected the region and left a lot of people homeless. Our correspondent, Oreoluwa Shonibare, examines the situation of IDP camps.
The northeast states of Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, Taraba and Yobe are for some time now shared a similar burden. Attacks by the terrorist group Boko Haram, which has resulted in lives being lost, houses destroyed, and thousands displaced from their homes. The governments of the affected states subsequently set up camps for the internally displaced. And with the efforts of the federal government to contain the insurgents, there was hope that those dislodged by the violence would soon return to their homes. However, the timeline set by the military to quell the sect was not met, which meant that as the violence continued, the numbers of the displaced increased. And so did the dilemma of the governors, who by now were becoming overwhelmed with providing daily relief: bedding, clothing, food, medicine, education. An endless list of needs. But the governors appear not to be giving up on their resolve to rehabilitate the displaced and ultimately the region.
The federal government had magnanimously decided to support us with the Bama initiative, a very beautiful pilot scheme, which we hope will be replicated in all parts of the devastated Northeast.
But in doing so, there must be an understanding that minds have been broken, and it will take more than rebuilding structures or providing clothes and food to restore the confidence of the people. Oreoluwa Shonibare, Channels Television News.
To throw light on the progress so far made in the rebuilding of the Northeast region, I'm being joined by the Executive Secretary of the Presidential Committee on the Rebuilding of the Northeast, Professor Sunday Ochoche. He joins us from our Abuja studios. Thank you so much, Professor Ochoche, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, how would you describe the situation in the Northeast regarding the resettlement of internally displaced persons?
The resettlement of internally displaced persons in the Northeast has taken off well. If we recognize that the problem had been enormous, it has been there for a long while. Millions of people were displaced, millions of people require resettlement. Quite a number of them are also outside the country. So it is a humongous task, and it's going to take a while. And so much of how that goes on depends a lot too on the status of or the situation with the security in the Northeast. And with the stabilization of the situation in the Northeast, there is an increasing return to a number of the communities that were displaced. I know, for example, if you go to Yobe State, communities like a town like Gujba that was completely razed down is fully back to life. If you go to Borno State, places like Konduga are fully back to life. It's so unfortunate to be hearing about the suicide attacks on Dikwa. Dikwa was virtually coming back to life, and the Victim Support Fund, which I happen to work with, we work closely with the Borno State government to reconstruct all the public infrastructure there, the schools, the hospital, the police barrack, and life was gradually beginning to return to normal. You go to Adamawa, a number of the communities too, Michika, Hong, and local governments like Mubi North, Mubi South, Maiha, virtually all of them have, the communities coming back. But there are still a lot of other areas that the security situation and other considerations perhaps are delayed significantly the return of the people.
You said it yourself, the task is indeed enormous, but what do you think it will cost to complete this project in terms of funding?
In terms of funding, it's difficult to quantify, but efforts made so far have given, if I go back to the assessment made by the defunct Presidential Initiative on Northeast, which is now part of the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative, the PCNI. About 2 years ago, the PI made an assessment of the situation in the Northeast, and by their calculation, by their estimate, it was going to take a minimum of 4 trillion naira in the short term to reconstruct a number of the infrastructure that had been destroyed. Towns had been ruined, infrastructure like bridges, electricity, water supply, virtually everything completely destroyed in those places. It would take a lot to do it, and will take the joint effort of virtually everybody, the different levels of government, the international community, the private sector, everybody to join hands to do it. That is one component, but the human dimension is probably even more complicated than the physical infrastructure. The human stories around the physical infrastructure are really touching. They are very sad, very unfortunate. People whose livelihoods have been destroyed, respectable families that have been reduced to living a life on the run, life in camps, people who have been so traumatized. When you have women who don't know where their children are, whether their husbands are alive or not, families who have been separated, people who witnessed parents or members of family being slaughtered by Boko Haram. There's so much emotional trauma. There are a number of children there that have been orphaned. You know, this dimension, the real human stories around this, managing that component requires perhaps even much more effort than the physical restructuring. When you also consider the pain and the issues as to what to do, issues of transitional justice around those who have committed all the atrocities around communities. What do you do with them? We hear people are surrendering. Is it enough for people just to, after committing all the atrocities, to come and say that they have surrendered? And then we say, hallelujah, thank God you surrendered, and take them in? So all these elements, I think, at the end, may even be more complicated than the challenge of physical reconstruction.
So having been in the center of all this, what will you say, what are the challenges you have faced in carrying out this task?
The challenges are many. Number one at the moment, I think, is security. Yes, the security situation has considerably improved, but it will take so much more to build confidence in people, to be sure that they can go back and return to a life of normalcy, free from any threat or fear of attack by Boko Haram. And then for them to return to their farms, to return to some of the isolated areas to do their work. Then, of course, there's the challenge of resources. Resources, I mean, the needs are much more than the resources available. There are challenges, like we've heard in a few occasions, goes around the actual management of whatever the resources are. Unfortunately, around every crisis, there are those who think that it's opportunity to help themselves. So there are issues of the management of those resources. But also there is a challenge that in a situation where the needs are many and the resources are few, balancing the different needs. Every situation is priority. I'm beginning to prioritize the prioritized situation. if there is anything like that, prioritizing the priorities becomes a major challenge. Where you now begin to take into consideration the balancing that you need to make between states, between the different ethnic groups, between different communities, between different areas of challenge. Will you consider first the orphans or the widows or the physical reconstructions or those who are maimed because of the suicide bombings? So the priorities are so many. And with limited resources, determining which one to begin to address, as a primary.
Professor Sunday Ochoche, thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10. He's the Executive Secretary of the Presidential Committee on the Rebuilding of the Northeast Region. When the News at 10 returns, Nigerian Stock Exchange targets new profile set to become a public liability company. That's in Business News. Join us again.